Oh man, this is different. Normally we don't host these at night, but the opportunity was just way too amazing to pass up. We're chatting with Immutable co-founder Robbie, aka OX Ferg. He is having some technical difficulties joining up, so we will be starting as soon as we can get him in here. But other than that, we have a solid group of folks here: Anish, Jonah, AJ, and some pretty cool people in the audience. So I'm super excited to get this conversation going and take it to the moon. For those who aren't familiar with Immutable, it's a layer two solution that allows you to mint NFTs, and the transactions are actually gasless. So the really cool thing that's happening here is we're moving into a space where, at least for gaming and what we know about how these NFTs are minted, you have games like Guild of Guardians who are looking to hop in and have partnered with Immutable to launch their game on their platform. And for the future, where we see high gas fees on the side of Ethereum, we're moving into a space where innovation is taking over. A lot of that innovation is coming from the Immutable side in the form of L2s or layer two side chains, and it's going to be a really really good call. So we're just going to wait for him to get in. Until then, Anish, Jonah, AJ, how are you doing?
You're just not letting me sleep, man. I'm trying to go to bed. These are usually at 11 a.m. and here I am. I'm an old man, dude. So
you go to bed at like 8 o'clock at night, or where are you in the world?
yeah, East Coast. I'm just joking, but no, it's cool, and I'm excited about this one. We've been following Immutable for a while with Guild of Guardians, and they're just making a lot of right moves and partnering with a lot of cool companies. So excited to dig in for sure.
Yeah, I think Robbie's in here. I'm trying to find him in the crowd and invite him up. For some reason, Twitter Spaces is rugging people, which is a bit unfortunate, but we'll make it work. We'll make it work. But no, I think it's going to be a really dope conversation and just getting a deep dive, because I don't think like we've gone deep on what's happening on the side of Immutable. But if you think about where games are going, and I look at side chains, and in terms of side chains that are having transactionless gas fees, you look at Immutable. They're the only one. I know Ronin does incredibly great things in the space with very low gas fees, and you have Polygon. But it's going to be a space where we see, in my opinion, multiple winners and multiple people who are able to kind of bridge the gap and create ecosystems that are incredibly, incredibly innovative for the space. So we just added up Crypto Ninja as well, GN, excuse me. How are you doing?
What's good, Brycent? Happy to be here. Yeah, we're up here again. Very excited about this. And what's up? What's up, Jonah?
Yo, so literally, like, geez, people are calling like crazy. What's up, man? Pleasure. It's almost like we talked recently. Crazy.
I'm
No,
DMing
you're
Robbie
good.
right
By
now,
the
trying
way,
to
like,
trying to get him up.
I was doing some, like I look at all the networks. Like, what I'm really interested in hearing about on this conversation is where they see their relationship with GameStop going, because I know they recently announced GameStop in partnership setting aside $100 million to invest in their ecosystem. And we know that's going to heat up the entire space, right? You got Polygon, they're setting up their war chest. Solana and FTX are gearing up for a war chest, and Solana has a lot of advantages there. And Immutable is now starting up their war chest. So, obviously we're having all these different verticals of capital. And the one that no one's talking about as well is Hedera. They've got about $5 billion and they want to be in gaming. But obviously Immutable has substantially higher network effects.
Jonah, I have a question for you.
Yo, what's up?
Hey, so the MetaOps folks recently switched from Immutable to building on Solana. Do you have deeper insights and expertise on what the pros and cons of developing for each platform? I know in MetaOps case, they were having a lot of trouble integrating Unity with Immutable X.
Well, I'm not a developer, so I can't speak exactly to that. Like where I work on gaming is more on the distribution side, but I can say, from what I understand, Solana works with like some variation of this language called WASM, which Polkadot also does. If I have to go back and look, but apparently it has like different traits that are more pro gaming. But I'm not a developer, so I couldn't comment on that. I play the games, I can't make them. I would like to make them though.
Yeah, that's super fair. I think a lot of what people miss in this space, oftentimes they're looking at, it's gasless or low transaction fees or high throughput, or, they're looking at some technical indicator and trying to quantify something where you just entirely miss the developer experience. Because day in and day out, developers have to build the games on these infrastructures. And when you're building an infrastructure like this, you have to make opinionated decisions. And your decisions will lead to different workflows being a bit easier than other workflows, or different integrations being easier to pull off than others. And I think looking at this very deeply is really important if you're a game developer, or, you're a project trying to launch on one of these side chains. What is the developer experience? What are the tool sets that you use as part of developing, and do they integrate well on that side chain?
Yeah, I'm just reading. They both use the language is called Rust. I went to go do a double look. Quite frankly, I'm more on the business side and playing the games and building the models for players to play the games. And then geniuses like you and others, they actually do the real work. The one advantage Solana has, quite frankly, is that they are more of a Web 2 chain than most. It's very venture backed. It has a lot of distribution power, right? You've got Fractal with Justin Kahn, who that's there's a lot of power there. You have a lot of ex Riot Games devs building games on there. The one game that looks super interesting that I'm following is Everseed, which is building on Solana. And then there's more of an iGaming type game called Mecha Fight Club that has considerable backing as well. But quite frankly, the network will do what the network does, unless the issues are like bottlenecks in transferring items in a game. It's really the games themselves that are going to make the network. And so what I'm curious about with Immutable is, with GameStop's funding plus their own funding, and they'll probably have other co-investors, what kind of developers can they bring to the table, and what kind of games can they produce? Because games like Gods Unchained really did give them an advantage, and now they kind of have to capitalize on the brand that they've built in this space.
Well, it is that time. Robbie has joined us here on the stage, so we're going to be able to get first-hand account from him what the plans are moving forward with, a lot of exciting information that's happening. One, around the raise, the connection with GameStop, Guild of Guardians, Gods Unchained. Like, I'm just incredibly excited for what they're building. So, without further ado, Robbie, how are you doing? GM for you, because if I'm not mistaken, you are here in Australia, and I think you just got rugged again.
We'll get him back.
Yeah, it's showing for me that he's still a listener. So let's try to get him back
same
up.
here too.
Yeah, I'm getting the same. Honestly, you have to. I don't know if they're like these spaces are running on AWS, but AWS has not been very kind to a lot of platforms today.
Yeah, I noticed the same thing actually. Like Discord was going crazy. Everything was kind of having problems today.
Hey, can people hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Perfect. I'm not even on headphones. Nothing has worked. I was on my laptop and then switched my phone. I apologize, everyone. But here now.
No worries at all. We are just happy to have you here, hanging out with us. How are you doing? It's morning for you, correct? If not mistaken, you're in Australia.
Yeah, just after midday. So we're in Sydney. I'll be doing the rounds at GDC and at South by Southwest and at NFT LA. So plenty of time to catch up with people in the States. But yeah, we're primarily based in Sydney.
That is absolutely sick. Well, I just want to jump straight into it because I know we had like a little bit of technical difficulty, and I don't know how much time I have you for. So, one, I'm incredibly excited and honored that we get to chat on these amazing topics in which you guys are building over at Immutable, which I think is one of the most innovative solutions for not only gaming but NFTs in general, in a space where we see the whole idea around it, is the carbon emissions too high, around gas fees on Ethereum, et cetera, et cetera. But I think you guys are really spearheading a new way forward for games and overall NFT ecosystems. So I will start it off and guys, if you are on the speakers list, if you want to come up and ask questions, feel free to join us. We want this to be an open-ended conversation and really just have a good talk around how we move the needle forward for gaming and also what Immutable plans to do to move it forward. So I want to jump straight into it, Robbie. Can you give us a little bit of your background, prior to Immutable, and what really compelled you to get involved and start this?
Yeah, of course. So I think first thing to know about me on a personal level is I am a massive gamer. I have been since I've been a kid. I have probably 4,000 hours on League of Legends, which is absolutely an enormous waste of time because I got to Silver 5 at my best. So I am trash. And a ton of other games as well. And like addictive to the point that I really had to go cold turkey when I started the company. So I try to avoid games, and when I do play them, they're pretty much games that have some finite amount of time that can be invested into them. So sort of like single player, because I definitely have an addictive personality on that side. And the other thing is that I've been a software engineer for a while, and I've been doing ventures for a while. So I've created a lot of tech startups over the past decade with my brother, who is also my co-founder. Everything from, we started off actually by building a machine learning platform that competed with Shopify. So it automatically optimized your store's pricing and copy based on what it would think would convert the best. And we also built a League of Legends betting platform where you could bet on your own League of Legends matches, sort of self-wagering on your skill versus one of your opponents. And I think the background from that is I bet on every single video game with my family as a kid. Like I would do Super Smash Bros. Tournaments, and I would just love, I don't know, something is clearly in my brain loves this kind of risk on things, but I loved just putting $5 on a Smash Bros. Tournament and then keep going. And I've lost a ton of money because I was literally just deterministically worse than James at Smash Bros, my brother, but it still made it a ton of fun to do. And I think those backgrounds were actually really critical into getting into crypto early. So I got into Bitcoin in late 2014 and Ethereum in early 2015. No fortunes were made here. I sold everything in the DAO hack, and then since then have learned my lesson, and I've literally never sold another coin again. Like I just buy and hold things that I long-term believe in. And I kind of liked Bitcoin when it came out, but I was obsessed with Ethereum. And I think the reason I was obsessed with Ethereum is I realized two things. One, you could actually build smart contracts on it and play with it. And that's really, really powerful because suddenly it goes from being this abstract concept of transforming the future to be something you can quite literally create apps that people can interact with. And I was completely blown away with Etherroll, if anyone tried it out, which is a very, very simple smart contract built on Ethereum that allows you to essentially roll a die and get money based on the probability of it. So it's kind of like gambling. And the reason I was blown away is not because I like gambling, I don't, but we, in literally sort of 100 lines of code, built something that had never before been possible. So we rendered redundant tens of billions of dollars of government spend every year, enforcing compliant payouts on slot machines or kind of gambling machines, enforcing transparent probabilities. And we did something that the government or Web2 could never do, which is we disintermediated the profit takers and instead allowed the community to own the profits of this machine and market with it. And it was very clear to me that if someone could build this thing in a couple of weeks, it would be insane to not think that the entire world was going to run on smart contracts of some kind in the future, whether they're on Ethereum, how they're constructed. I didn't know the details of, but very clearly the world was going to go to this. And so we started building. We built trading bots. We built faucet scraping bots. If you remember, there were literally Bitcoin faucets back in the day that would give you like 1,000th of a Bitcoin just for kind of going on the website. And we built bots that would kind of scale and distribute it and collect a lot of these user rewards. And then at the end of 2016, if you know Compound, we were going to make what we called the Distributed Autonomous Bank, or DAB, which was basically a lending protocol. We had a white paper ready to go. I think we had solved a lot of the problems. I wouldn't say we had quite solved all of the collateralization problems that Rob is working on, but we saw sort of 5 ICOs go to 100, go to 500, and we thought, A, everyone was going to go to jail, and B, that the entire space was filled with scams. And so it kind of serendipitously, we paused that because of legal cold feet. We always wanted to do something that was regulatorily in the clear because we wanted to build something big. But serendipitously, we saw CryptoPunks come out back in the mid of 2017. And that was the moment where we said, hey, like, this is the future. We have to build games using this technology. And so we did. We built the first ever multiplayer game on a blockchain. It was called Etherbots. It came out in December 2017. And literally all of the logic was on-chain. We built an on-chain perk tree, an on-chain battling system. We had a commit reveal encryption scheme to prevent sort of misuse that required block times in between them to prevent against sort of game theoretic attacks by miners. Like, it was very nerdy, it was very on-chain, and it was very expensive. Playing a match of this now will cost you $5,000. And so I think we discovered it pretty early on from experimenting, just sort of what needs to go on chain, what needs to go off chain, and what the right balance is in building up the best possible applications for gamers. And obviously, since then, we've expanded a lot. We have a couple of games, Gods Unchained and Guild of Guardians. Gods Unchained, I think, is one of the largest blockchain games in the world right now by players. It's got hundreds of thousands playing every week. And that's after we culled all the bots. And the thing we're really passionate about is, how do we help transform the world of gaming and the world of unique value more broadly by developing a platform that connects liquidity for unique digital assets everywhere. And what I really mean by that is, our passion is, how do we take what is currently a very broken NFT experience, A, because of scale, and B, because of security, but C, because if you want to trade an asset inside a particular marketplace or a game, your liquidity is locked to the orders that exist on that marketplace. And we think that's really broken, because the future experience we're going to see is a player earns something in Fortnite. They may not even know that it's an NFT, but they want to sell that NFT, and we want to be able to connect them with buyers from everywhere, whether it's from OpenSea, whether it's from GameStop's NFT marketplace, whether it's a programmatic buyer via an API who is market making at a Goldman Sachs trading desk for in-game items. And this is what the kind of open order book must achieve, is this connectivity and financial backend in an NFT world that is currently getting really siloed in terms of liquidity. So I realized that was a bit long-winded, but that's sort of my journey to date, why I'm passionate about startups, why I'm passionate about gaming, and also why I'm passionate about the technical choices and the layer in the stack that Immutable is occupying today.
I am legit mind blown. Like, the idea, and this is something that I have just been pushing so hard, is the idea that gamers being able to own these assets without even having to realize like that it's a thing. Like, there not being any sort of a user hurdle for them to be able to get into these assets and leverage them in game, but also doing things without having to feel like there is a blockchain related lift every single time they do any sort of action associated with moving something on the blockchain. So it's so interesting and exciting that you guys are building that way.
Yeah, precisely. I think that's exactly right. And if you look at the Gods Unchained website, which has been up for a few years now, you'll notice that we don't use the word NFT anywhere. And that's not a top-down policy. It's just how we created it, because 15 months ago, no one knew what the hell an NFT was. Like, you have to realize how absurd this is from our position. We were working on this incredibly niche technology. To me, the word NFT was like naming some deep technical label. It's like talking about how HTTPS works is hypertext transfer protocol that's secure. Like, no one cares about that, to being suddenly this household name. And so I'm fine with that. But to me, the thing that has to happen is the value has to be there irrespective of the label of NFT. Players have to be able to say, hey, when I own this item, I have guarantees around how many copies of this can exist. What kind of provenance does this track? What kind of metadata is immutable? What value can I know will stick around based on the immutable principles of this asset? And that's just for gaming. That's not even talking about tokenizing term deposits or insurance contracts, things where this is literally tokenizing trillions of dollars worth of value currently in the real world. And so security and immutability of metadata is paramount. It's table stakes.
Awesome. I see we have a quick hand. Influence, what's going on?
Hey, super excited to be on the show. Robbie, that was an incredible introduction, and congrats on the massive raise. I know you guys are going to do some pretty incredible things with that. I am super curious with IMMUTABLEX and how you guys are going to possibly utilize not just NFTs, but semi-fungible tokens, ERC 1155s, things that change state. I'm just curious, because that's a huge part of gaming, and having items that, maybe level up, or characters that level up, and how you guys are going to do that.
So glad you asked the question. So there's two responses here. The first is, how do you have flexible metadata that allows you to capture the use cases game developers often want, which is, hey, I want to upgrade an item. I want to show that it's actually now 500 experience points, or in Gods Unchained, I've merged 5 meteorite cards into a silver quality card. And that's how the fusing economy system and deflationary aspect works. And that one is actually really simple. And I think the answer is not necessarily ERC 1155. I think the answer is having a system of storing metadata that is flexibly immutable and mutable. So if you work with an NFT on Immutable, we have 2 things. We have completely immutable, excuse the pun, this is the drawback of having a name like Immutable. We have completely cemented and non-changeable metadata, like you would have on an L1 NFT, which they effectively are counterfactually, and that can never be changed. And that's called the blueprint. If you ever withdraw this asset to layer 1, it must be passed the smart contract. Nothing can interfere with that. Nothing can edit that. So that's really important, and that's guaranteed by the zero knowledge proofs that sort of underwrite billions of dollars of value. And we also have this thing called just the mutable metadata, which can be updated over time. And so I'm sure that things will become more flexible in the future even, but right now we think this is the best approach, which is allow game devs to say, hey, we can change this stuff. Here's the rules that we have for changing this stuff, and maybe you can put limitations on those rules via ZK rollups, which is what we're building toward. But the core thing is, in Gods Unchained, for instance, all of the core characteristics around what kind of asset it is, what ID it is, what its scarcity is all stored in the blueprint. And with the blueprint, you can do really cool things, because you can say, well, hey, you can only have X amount of this ever generated. You can only use this in particular logical ways, because that's what is encoded into how the zero knowledge rollup will permit logical executions of transfers. The second question you ask is really important, which is, the main benefit of ERC 1155s in many cases is this increased degree of flexible fungibility that confers liquidity onto the underlying assets. And this is actually a really important problem. So the fundamental problem is the very thing that makes NFTs awesome, which is uniqueness, also makes them antithetical to liquidity. They suck. And that's fragmentation. So let's take the example of Gods Unchained again, which has 22 million NFTs, more than the rest of Ethereum gaming pretty much combined. And I'm not saying that as a vanity metric, as in that's just how that game is designed. It's this kind of to be high volume, high mass audience based NFTs. The problem we have is when you have 22 million NFTs, you have 22 million individual order books. Every single one of them has its own bid and ask spread. Every one of them is literally like a Bitcoin. It has a market. And so you have this problem, which is you can't get liquidity. You can't have people kind of say, well, hey, this is what a diamond card should be worth. We see some solutions in this space. ERC 1155 is an attempt at them. It has downsides. It reduces uniqueness. We also see solutions like wrapping of NFTs. So wrapped punks, for instance, also massive downsides, which is it costs you $50 or $100 to wrap each punk. And so maybe it's useful for creating an index fund for really valuable assets, but it's certainly not bringing liquidity to the long tail of billions of in-game items that are going to be owned. Because here we're really talking about, if you're someone playing a game in World of Warcraft and you earn, a rare obsidian dagger, and it's just one of 40,000 in the game, and you want to sell it, you shouldn't just have to create an order book to say, hey, come bid on my obsidian dagger number 452. You probably just want to sell it to the person who's willing to bid the highest amount for any obsidian dagger. And so this is a long-winded way of coming to our point, which is what Immutable is building is metadata-based trades. And I highly encourage you to search that at Google, Immutable metadata-based trades, because this is completely unique. It's something that can only be done in an L2 environment, and it is the ability to create bids and asks based on the metadata characteristics rather than the unique order book of an NFT. The reason this is so powerful is you don't need to use 1155. You keep all of the uniqueness fundamentally of the NFT, which 721 confers, but you can create liquid markets based on the thing you really want to trade. So as soon as this releases, and it will be released in the next 46 months, you can say, go bid on any diamond card in Gods Unchained or any dragon card in Gods Unchained. And you also have instantaneous bids for newly instantiated assets. What do I mean by this? I mean, if you're in Fortnite and you own a John Wick skin, right now you have to list it for sale before you can, and then someone has to come and bid on it before anything can happen. Or someone has to find that asset and individually bid on it. In this world, because there is a market just for any John Wick skin, which is guaranteed by the logic of this proof, you can instantly sell that asset as soon as you receive it. So the power of this is, if NFT trading, being gas free, is the 0 to 1 for liquidity of NFTs. It's the core thing needed to unlock even a reasonably functional business. This is the 1 to 100. This is the thing that will allow us to use NFTs for everything, from trading on financial markets for tokenized term deposits or insurance contracts or royalties and IP licenses at large. This is what unlocks NFTs underpinning trillions of dollars and trillions of enumerated volumes worth of assets globally.
That was an extremely detailed and incredible answer. So thank you for that. And quick follow-up to it. Something we see in our game right now as we move from Ethereum to Starknet is that there are some assets that if someone has out for sale and someone puts a bid on it, they can basically change something about that asset. And then, let's say they're scanning their asteroid in our game. It was prior to them bidding on it unscanned. So now this person rolls it, they find out that it's, a common or whatever it is, and then they accept the bid because they know it's not worth any money. Is there a way that Immutable approaches that to ensure that if data changes, that order essentially is no longer valid?
Completely, of course. This is core to the design. So what we'll be able to do is say, well, hey, these bids only, and this is the unique thing. And I, as you can tell, I get really passionate about this. It's something I'm incredibly passionate about, because this is the problem we need to solve to make NFTs power everything. And the reason you can't do this in the Web2 equivalent, the reason I can't go to eBay and just bid on any kitchenware good, or go to like a secondhand car sales website and bid on any Holden, any Ford Commodore with like X kilometers on the odometer, is there's no way to immutably bind metadata in the real world. There's no global standard saying, hey, once this is set and authenticated, it's real, you can't change it. But there is with NFTs. And so when you create bids on these assets, the logic is based on that blueprint or immutable metadata. And so if something changes, your bid will no longer apply to that asset. It is only going to conditionally fulfill based on things that you can be certain of.
That is very clear. And are you guys planning to move from StarkX to StarkNet fairly soon? Or is that, I guess, I don't know if you're able to speak about that, but, as a game that's going to be building on StarkNet, we're just waiting for, them to really get out of alpha to do quite a bit of our release. And, you guys being the 800-pound gorilla in the Starkware system, I'm curious to hear whether or not your plans to move to StarkNet are, soon or undecided.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we have decided we will be sharing more with the public soon. So stay tuned, and we'll have a pretty detailed approach to share with you guys.
Thank you,
dude. That monologue was absolutely insane. Like, I'm trying to think of things to like follow up with that, and I'm just like, he's literally like on some Elon Musk like shit. It's like, I don't know if I have ever been, and maybe you can call us whatever you want. I am not giving financial advice. Immutable does not pay me to do this. But hearing how deep Robbie was just able to go on that, I'm like over here texting Anish and AJ, and I'm like, bruh, if I ever launch a game, the shit is going on Immutable, because literally, like, I can't comprehend half of the stuff he just said, but what I do know is that the passion behind it, based on how deep he was able to go from his background to answering questions that Influence put before us on the fly, to me, that's incredibly exceptional. I want to jump to Crypto Ninja, and then I'm going to follow up and change gears a little bit and talk about GameStop.
Hey, what's going on, Robbie? Great to talk to you again. Thank you, as always, Brycent. I don't want to front run your thing, Brycent. So, Robbie, I echo everything Brycent said. I'm like, I'm gonna have to go back and listen to it. But my first NFT was a Gods Unchained NFT, because I am a trader, and I'm getting into NFTs, and I didn't want to pay those fees. So you definitely solved the problem there. Got into Guilds of Guardian. Now have a guild or a Discord guild of 500 members. Super excited about the game. And so get to it. What you're building is incredible. Like there's no
Thank you.
question. And what Brycent is saying is so true. It's like the passion, and we see, and I've been in this space for some years to know the cream of the crop, and you guys are definitely that. So my question is you've had these huge raises, and you've obviously been able to put out quality games. As much as I honestly hate to admit it, um, I played Gods and Change for no play to earn rewards, and that's something I share with my guild and many people. I'm like, me personally, because I love the competition, and I don't honestly have the capacity in my schedule to play it for the rewards, but I love getting a deck and going against people and beating them. Like that's my rush. And so I'm curious to know, with all of this funding that you have, which is amazing and needed, what can we look forward to with the GameStop or the future? We know we got Guilds of Guardian coming to mobile, but what kind of peek can we see into where we're going specifically with gaming, and any details you give it? Because I have a community of raging people that want games, and most of us, all of us are on IMX primarily. And so just curious to know what you can give us, please.
Yeah, it's a great question. So maybe I'll speak to Immutable, and then to where I see the industry going, and I'll try and keep the plan a bit shorter. So to Immutable, we have these two parts to our business, right? We've got the studio side, which is Guild of Guardians, Gods Unchained, and more. And we recently just hired Justin Hulo, who was the general manager at Riot Games, to come on and lead this. And the reason we're so passionate about that, I think, is our thesis is gaming is not going to be what we've seen over the past year. The past year, we've seen some flashes in the pans, and we've seen some exceptional innovations with things like Axie, where they've proven out this thesis that this stuff can work. But where we're going to see everything trending toward is everything will be AAA. Everything is going to be modeled off like cost of acquisition, retention. Like, how can you create much better aligned business models? And the global quality of games across the board is just going to like radically increase. And the reason we haven't seen it is because it's very much a lagging indicator. Games take a very long time to build, especially good ones. And even companies working at breakneck speed, they're still going to take a year at least to put something really good out. And so that's why we're going to see a lag between all the capital coming into the space and exceptional games being poured out. But right now, the level of talent coming into gaming and blockchain gaming is insane. Like, no longer is a lot of ambitious computer science graduates going into tech startups. They're literally going into startups based on gaming. I mean, look at Splitgate, which was just like 4 Stanford comp sci people, and they said, hey, we're going to build a game. We have no idea how to build one, but we'll take the same methodologies used to build a startup and take that to build a game instead. And so I think that's the first thing. And the reason I'm so excited is both Guild of Guardians and Gods Unchained are designed to be mainstream games. They're designed to have the value of NFTs be not just speculatively playing. And it makes me really happy to hear you say that you just enjoy playing Gods Unchained for the sake of it, because that has to be the goal. If that's not your fundamental basis, then all of this other stuff around creating better incentives and creating better tokenomic systems to motivate people to play the game doesn't matter, because you have a lossy fundamental object, which all of these sort of financial services and acquisition loops are just failing to long-term retain users in. And so that's really important. As we see that content base across the board get better, we will start to see hit after hit after hit. And so Axie is going to be in very good company when you look at the size of games that are going to be successful. And so I'm thrilled for what we're going to be able to do with Gods Unchained and Guild of Guardians this year. They have massive budgets underneath them. They have incredible executives that we've brought on. We just brought another executive onto the studio side, Patrick Wagner, who formerly ran like a 500-person gaming studio. So that's going to be awesome. With gaming more generally, I think we're going to start to see games which are A, more mainstream, and B, use NFTs more invisibly in the background, especially while we have this tricky concept of like mainstream gamers haven't yet, there's a lot of backlash out there over NFT gaming. And I think there's a couple of approaches. One is to just build a core audience of 1 million true fans and kind of grow from there, like not just go to the public instantly. And the second approach is, well, how do we actually just stop selling the hype of NFTs and just deliver value? How do we make the game better? How do we make the game more fun? How do we deliver more value and grow it using these share to earn loops rather than saying how good this technology is? And so I think that's really incumbent on, we view that as our position, certainly as a platform with a huge amount of expertise in building these games to kind of work with all our partners. And that's what we do on a daily basis. When we work with companies like Imbu or Embersword or Illuvium, is we're sharing that IP and saying, hey, how can we create the best possible experience for players?
Thank you so much. Once again, you nailed it. Ooh-wee, thank you. Super excited. And thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Brycent, too.
Totally. I want to throw it to Anish. I saw he had his hand raised, then jump to Jonah because we haven't heard from him in a while. Then we'll hit influence.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on that question. And something that's really interesting, at least from my perspective, was your partnership with Congregate. Can you talk a little bit about that? I found that I got a little bit of nostalgia when I heard you guys were partnering with Congregate because, back in the day, those Flash games were pretty exciting. And then now they're pretty major. So would love for you to kind of talk more about that partnership.
Yeah, we're not yet public with, I think, all of the things that Congregate are going to be doing. That will be their news to share. But I can share that Congregate is looking very, very closely at, it's a big bet by them. That's coming CEO down in terms of how they're pivoting the company. I know it was something that they were very competitive in their process for. So, Immutable was in there with pretty much every other chain in terms of what platform they were looking for. But ultimately, I think, aside from the product benefits, the fact that we have a lot of expertise in this stuff is really what allows us to deliver value to those sorts of partners. And same, I was obsessed with Congregate as a kid. I used to play every kind of crappy web game you can imagine on there, and there were many. So I'm excited to see something that has been, and I think we're going to start seeing a lot more experimentation around this kind of highly distributable web game approach as well in NFT land, because what we're seeing is this breakdown of the boundary between technological mediums don't matter as much. We're seeing crossplay become ubiquitous in gaming. And so I'm not going to be surprised if we start to see sort of the breakdown of the barriers between financial applications and gaming applications further. And it's literally well, hey, how can we define a DeFi app that is fundamentally a game, or a game that is fundamentally financial? And it's kind of this cross-play of the two. We're seeing the financialization of gaming, and we're also seeing the gamification of finance at scale. Apps like Robinhood are at their core a money game. They are addictive. They give you points for coming in and trading every day, and they try to make things as instantly gratifying as possible. And so web-based gaming is very close to that, and I'm excited to see what we can do with NFTs in this area.
Let's jump to Jonah, then influence.
There it goes. Yeah, I don't know why it was not letting me unmute. But we could talk about GameStop. I wanted to hear what Brycent's thoughts are on GameStop and questions. But one thing I'd like to ask, a lot of other companies or organizations are going to develop games, and there's going to be a ton of Web3 games. There's going to be eventually an oversaturation of them. So what I would like to know from what you're working on is, where do you see the future of publishing games? Because that's where the real interesting question lies. Because I'm looking at everything you're doing. You have the money, you have the team. What does a Web3 publisher look like in your mind? Because effectively you are a publisher once you're handling the distribution, the creation, and the marketing of this game, such as Guild of Guardian. Where do you think about licensing rights, and where do you think about the player and its interaction with the publisher?
Such a good question. So I think publishing won't look the same as it does in Web 2. And that's because publishing is fundamentally focused on a couple of things. It's focused on regionalization, and it's also focused on go-to-market. And the concept of going to market in Web3 games is not the same activities day to day as it is in Web 2. Because in Web 2, it's how do I efficiently maximize performance marketing spend with highly converting ads, which is why you see those, those crazy ads for mobile games that are Save the Princess, that are highly sexualized. And it's just that's the lowest common denominator of what converts into people clicking on those ads. And they're literally just psychological machines. And In Web3, it's completely different. It's how do we design the best possible brand, long-term community, reputation, and tokenomics to create a economy that is valuable, that we can align incentives with and monetize via taking clips of or owning a percentage of. It's how do we design a play-to-earn scheme or a share-to-own scheme that is going to enable this Web3 game to grow faster than the biggest games in the world. And so the publishers that will succeed in there at first are not going to be, hey, we know how to deploy efficient performance marketing spend across like 5 different regions simultaneously while translating into languages. Those will certainly still be important, but it's actually going to be, here's the tokenomics, here's the branding, here's the community strategy that is going to make these games so successful. So more on the disruptive end. That's not to say that there won't be a place for traditional Web2 publishers. There will absolutely be a lot of them coming into the space, but the expertise that people need and the value that they give is going to be, like, a lot of that is going to be Web3 native. And I agree, I think Immutable is in that position. And when we look at our position from a partnerships perspective, absolutely, we have and will build the best possible liquidity platform for businesses to trade NFTs. But we also want to bring a ton of value in terms of, hey, here's how Gods Unchained and Guild of Guardians approaches tokenomics. Here's how we approach community building. Here's how we approach brand and marketing. Here's how we can help your game get started by sharing it with all of our audiences. And so I think we're in a really rare and unique position with a couple of games that are truly player focused. It's why we hired someone from Riot, because that is what they do best. And to be able to expand that to other games and kind of create the default playbook for here's how you build a quality Web3 game that isn't just a money grab, but instead is something that is much better for end players. And so I think that you're completely right. We're going to see a new definition of what publishing looks like in this industry. And I'm excited to see how that pans out.
No,
and Brycent, I do have 3 more minutes. I've got an
No, I just want to say thank you.
Totally. Want to open up the floor. Influence, you have it. One last question before we sign off with Robbie, but want to say thank you to Robbie, the entire Immutable team, Chelsea in the audience as well for helping make this happen. You know, anytime that we can get you and get the wealth of knowledge that you bring and just sharing your vision for Immutable, you know, we're incredibly blessed to be able to have it. So definitely much appreciated having you on. Influence, you get the last question, then we're signing off.
Well, all right. Thanks for the last question. The pressure is on, but I think this is a good one to actually end it on. I'm just curious, how do you see gaming evolve in the next 3 to 5 years in terms of, you know, what we're seeing right now is a lot of what I think is called, you know, hybrid Web3 gaming. You're doing a lot of traditional gaming, but you're using NFTs versus moving towards a very fully decentralized, all on-chain game. And, you know, because scalability is such a major factor of that, we haven't seen a lot of fully on-chain games. But yeah, I'm just curious to hear your thoughts around that.
I think fully on-chain games are going to be limited to gambling. I think it's the only context in which it really makes sense is when you need completely decentralized and provable computation of, like, essentially like financial games. In terms of gaming, we may see a progressive decentralization, but it's definitely not going to be, hey, the logic of the game is on chain. I mean, it's just impossible. Like, you can't put the logic of Gods Unchained, which is simple compared to something like Apex Legends or a dynamic kind of interactive game that's simulating physics. It's simply impossible. And so I think instead it's going to be, how do we deliver the core values of what that could achieve, which is people want trust, people want the right incentives, and people want an economy that can last. And I think we can achieve all of that with the use of NFTs and the use of, like, you know, DAOs or governance systems in the game that don't require all of the logic on the game to be decentralized. So, you know, maybe one day we'll be in a position where substantial portions of logic can be done decentralized and computed on chain, but I actually just don't think it is needed. I think the marginal value is incredibly diminishing.
Well, man, I don't really have anything else to say, Robbie. I know you got to jump. Definitely appreciate you coming on and the entire Immutable team for being a part of this. This was one of the more exciting Twitter spaces and knowledgeable Twitter spaces that I've been able to host. So I'm incredibly honored to be able to do so. Guys, thank you so much. This was a, you know, not a really last minute thing, but to do it at a different time than we normally host these, incredibly excited, and the viewer turnout was absolutely amazing. Robbie, excited to see what keeps being built at Immutable and bullish on what you guys are doing. Much love to everyone. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode.